everybody, this is Skin and welcome to my next podcast in the series I'm making to help you guys learn English faster and prepare for the IELTS test a lot more effectively. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about whether going to university is the best route to a successful career. Well, some people believe that this is the case because they think that going to university straight away after graduating, children can achieve success faster. But I don't think that this is the case, and I can speak from my own experience. But I'll tell you why later, because first of all, we need to talk about what is a successful career. Because if we don't know what a successful career is, then we don't know what route we should take, right? So, in my opinion, a successful career consists of a lot of things. The most important of which are probably money and social status. So as for social status, everyone wants their work to be recognized and valued and appreciated by other people. And if you work in your field but no one knows about your work and you are not respected in your field, I don't think that you can consider your career successful, right? And second of all, when we talk about money, we talk about whether your job allows you to live comfortably. So you gotta earn a sufficient amount of money to help you meet all the basic human needs, such as accommodation and food and clothes, probably. And you also, if you have a hobby which might be expensive, you also need enough money to satisfy your recreational needs as well. And if you have a family on your own, you also need to pay for your kids' education. You also need to pay for like food bills and a lot of other utility bills. So we're not talking about like being rich here. Like we don't know how much money you earn so that you can be like considered as a rich person. Because a successful career doesn't always like go hand in hand with being rich. So basically, you can still earn like just a sufficient amount of money, but you can still be considered as a successful person. So I don't think that being rich mingles with being successful or having a successful career. Right, so since we have a clearer understanding of what a successful career is, we're going to talk about whether going to university actually help us achieve better or higher social status and have more money, right? So firstly, with regard to social status, and especially the amount of respect that you get from people working in your field or people in general. When we think about this, it is clear that going to university doesn't really guarantee you this. Because, for example, if you're a doctor, you can only get respected by people working in your field, by other doctors and people in general. If you figure out how to cure people with diabetes, or if you actually, synthesize a certain vaccine to fight coronavirus or something. So only by doing, such things can you actually get a lot of respect from other people. But it takes dedication to actually achieve greatness. But when we factor in the reasons why people actually choose to study or pursue higher education, it often boils down to the fact that they just graduate from high school and they don't know what to do. They don't want to go to work, or their parents want them to study this or that. They themselves are not really clear about whether the major that they are choosing to study at university is actually what they take, a somewhat interest in, right? But we all too often just ignore this fact. And as a result, kids often end up studying what they don't like and they just apply themselves only half-heartedly. Or worse, many, myself included, even end up dropping out after 1 or 2 years. Alright, so as far as money is concerned, do you think that gaining a certain degree after 4 or 5 years in university can actually help you earn more money? Well, this appears to be the case because if you are well educated and you can do some sort of like skilled jobs that require you to be educated to a certain level so that you can do it. But in today's job market, I think employers these days don't really care much about your qualifications. As long as you can deliver the results, it doesn't matter much if you have or do not have a university degree. By the way, I also want to mention the fact that most universities place tremendous importance on theories and abstract knowledge, which appear to just suit, jobs that are in the field of science and technology, where, you need to have a very strong foundation and a very good grasp of all the concepts and knowledge so that you can carry out like research well. But these types of jobs are often not what university graduates actually end up doing. So I think it is better for school leavers to work in different jobs in the first few years after high school instead of going straight away to university, because this way they can experiment with their passions and they know exactly whether the job that the seemingly dream job of theirs is actually what they can do for the rest of their lives, and whether their dream jobs can provide them with what is necessary to live comfortably, of course in financial terms. And we should all bear in mind that after working for several years, they can always go back to university to pursue higher education. Or they can just work for themselves. It is not really uncommon to see people become like an entrepreneur after a few years accumulating experience and skills. Well, I'll wrap up my argument right now before we move on to the next topic. So basically, students can avoid wasting time and are more likely to be successful in their careers if they engage in some sort of employment as soon as they finish high school instead of going to university straight away. Well, it is important to note that IELTS topics are incredibly difficult, and it's not really about something that you would run into or you would talk about with your friends every day. So basically you need to remember these ideas and try to speak using those ideas and vocabulary on your own, all right? And the next topic is very ridiculous. Some people believe that university students should only be allowed to study subjects that will be useful in their future. Because, by forcing people to choose a particular subject, governments can ensure that any knowledge and skill gaps in the economy are covered. But this line of reasoning is flawed because it fails to factor in the fact that the main purpose of schooling is to enable students to develop as individuals. So we should factor their interests in the equation before we decide whether to allow them to study something, right? So if we just force them to study things like science and technology, it is tantamount to considering them as cogs and machines. But they are humans and they pay for their education, so they should be allowed to study whatever they like. And by the way, saying that a subject is more important than the other or others is to ignore the fact that we just can't say for sure whether a subject is useful or not, because one subject might be useful in this field but is completely useless in other fields. And not every student actually work in the field that is related to their major. So in the future, the so-called useful subjects may be completely useless to them if they work in a different field. And maybe in the future, when robots take over all the jobs, all the manufacturing jobs, then creative jobs may be valued more. And I don't think that robots can actually be as creative as like humans. And therefore, we may need more students of arts and literature and history rather than science and technology. And a final argument is that society will benefit more if students are passionate about what they are learning. And we can see this clearly in our lives when we use services or products that are created with passion. So by no means should the government force students to study a certain subject, even though it may benefit the economy of the country, but it's just wrong to force them to do so because they ultimately pay for their education and they have the right to get the education that they want. And they should also be allowed to study whatever they like because society will benefit more if they are able to do so. Well, that's it for today's podcast, and I hope that you guys have learned a thing or two. And remember that you guys also need to practice, otherwise it's not going to be as effective as I anticipate. Okay? And as I said before, I'm here to help you guys learn English faster and prepare for the IELTS test a lot more effectively. And I'm not gonna go back on my words, but remember, you also need to do what I say, otherwise I can't guarantee your progress. Cool, so see you guys in the next episode.